listener production.
Hi, Sasha Barbagat with you. Welcome to The Briefing. Yesterday, news dropped that 83-year-old broadcaster Alan Jones had been charged with indecent assault and sexual touching of young men. He's facing 24 offences against 8 victims spanning 2 decades following a lengthy investigation by New South Wales Police. This story played out across the day as the former broadcaster, who has been described as more powerful than the Prime Minister, was arrested at his luxury Sydney apartment.
That male was later taken to the Sydney City Police Station, where he's been charged with 24 offences.
Kate McClymont is Chief Investigative Reporter at the Sydney Morning Herald, and in the second half of this episode, we'll hear her breakdown of yesterday's events and what we can expect to happen next. First, though, it's time for the headlines with Helen Smith on Tuesday, November 19.
Morning, Sasha. Morning, everyone. Almost half of voters want the Australian government to review AUKUS and nuclear submarines after Donald Trump's win. That's according to a new Essential poll by The Guardian, which also revealed Australians are increasingly concerned about Trump's incoming administration when it comes to the economy, peace and climate change. They've also expressed hope that Australia will take steps to protect our democratic institutions from foreign interference before Trump is in the White House by setting strong rules to limit the power of American tech companies.
And speaking of the president-elect, he's posted to social media confirming he wants to use the military to enforce his promised mass deportation of undocumented immigrants from the US. Now, the only way he could do this would be by declaring the immigration issue as a national emergency, and he has talked about doing that on his campaign trail. And that'd be a big deal because this would let him engage the US military to help with the deportation. And experts say that'd cause huge political and legal waves as US law is generally designed to prevent presidents from using the US military to enforce domestic laws. So if we saw that happen, it'd be a massive deal, Helen. And, we've seen over the last few weeks reactions from different sides of how they're feeling post-Trump win. One cruise company is offering to lend a helping hand to the people who aren't happy with Donald Trump's win. It's a residential cruise line called Villa V Residences. Now, they announced earlier in November that they'd be launching a program to let travellers join the ship called Odyssey at any port. It's going on a cruise over the next several years. Now, what it's doing is putting these packages together where you can essentially escape the presidency. So if you join, you can do a 1-year package called Escape from Reality. A 2-year package is called Midterm Selection, of course, a play on midterm elections, which will happen in 2 years' time in the US. 3-year package, Anywhere But Home. 4-year package is called Skip Forward. So essentially, you can just skip the entire Trump presidency if you want. So I thought that was pretty fun.
The Kremlin has accused the US of risking World War III if it has cleared Ukraine to use its missiles on Russia. This broke yesterday morning with reports Joe Biden has officially cleared Kyiv to fire US rockets at its enemy. Up until now, it's only been allowed to use them to defend Ukraine on its own soil. And an official spokesperson for Russia's parliament has spoken out following the US president's reported approval, saying he's trying to escalate the situation while still in power. Now, one Russian politician also spoke about wanting Donald Trump to reverse the decision when he takes the White House.
Yeah, and Joe Biden has made his first comments since this story broke at the G20 summit in Brazil, but he still has not confirmed the reports.
The United States strongly supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Everyone around this table, in my view, should as well.
And we've also heard from Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Strikes are not carried out with words. Such things are not announced. Missiles will speak for themselves. Glory to Ukraine.
That translation thanks to the Daily Mail. Now, Helen, the G20 is happening at the moment. It's getting underway officially, properly today, our time. But we did see overnight Anthony Albanese meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping ahead of the summit. Now, they were talking about, the usual peaceful relations, trade talks, climate change. That was what the PM wanted to cover. But apparently, China's president said Australia needs to shelve differences alliances with China if it wants relations to develop well. So still this kind of tightrope we're balancing of like, yeah, we're mates. But Australia has genuine concerns about the actions of China, particularly in the South China Sea and in the Pacific. So it's always tinged with that kind of overriding sense of we're mates, but we're more frenemies maybe at the moment. Now, the two last met for a formal bilateral meeting last December. They also met at the G20 summit in Bali in late 2022. And this was at the start of Albo's prime ministership because he was looking to thaw this very frosty relationship that Australia had had with China under Scott Morrison. So, yeah, interesting to see them chatting again.
A parliamentary committee set up to examine Australia's approach to harm on social media has not recommended a ban for under 16s. Now, this is despite both Labor and the Coalition backing the move and looking to get it through Parliament by the end of the year. The committee instead thinks there should be a bigger focus on protecting privacy and users being able to reset, alter or turn off algorithms set by companies like Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah, there were 12 recommendations all up. You've mentioned 2 there. There were a few more among them, making it easier for the government to enforce laws on the digital platforms, introducing duty of care, which has been discussed and we ran in the headlines last week, also requiring platforms to provide data access to researchers and public interest organisations, provide greater digital literacy education, and also report back to Parliament on the outcome of the trial of age assurance technology. So this is making sure that people who are under the determined age are not getting online. Now, when it came to the ban itself, this committee found that alone just is not enough to curb the harms presented by social media. And it also said any rule changes that do affect young people should be made in consultation with those young people themselves, because during the hearings for this inquiry, they heard from young people who had felt frustrated at being left out of the process, which I found really interesting. But I mean, they say all this, the ban looks like it's going ahead anyway, and they haven't consulted with young people on it, but this was the recommendation of this committee. And it's worth noting as well, this is made up of senators from all different parties, Greens, Labor, Liberal, National. So it is an overarching look at what is happening with those laws. And most of them agreed that a ban just wouldn't be effective on its own.
It does make you wonder why and how this ban has kind of just kept going forward and got through, considering all of those factors and considering we were just talking about it before with algorithms and how you can kind of change them yourselves, but it's not really as effective because you're still going to get random things that's going to pop up. So, yeah, look, to me, this seems education and changing those little algorithms and platforms does seem more effective than a ban because these 16-year-olds are going to have social media when they turn 17. And Matilda's star Sam Kerr and her partner US soccer player Christy Mewers have announced they are expecting a baby. The couple posted some cute photos on Instagram holding up an ultrasound scan and another pointing to Christy's stomach. They first shared their relationship with the public in 2021, shortly after the Tokyo Olympics, and they both went on to represent their countries at the 2023 Women's World Cup. The pair have been showered with love on Instagram, with fellow Matildas players and soccer stars from around the world commenting on the post.
Yay, Sam Kerr. I love watching pregnancy announcements at the moment because I am pregnant. So I'm like, which celebs are pregnant at the same time I am? There's not that many good ones. Sam Kerr's a good one. I mean, I know Sam herself isn't pregnant, but her expecting a baby at the same time as me is fun. Princess Beatrice, Megan Fox, Giselle Bundchen, and Jennifer Lawrence. So, yeah, they're all right, I guess. But yeah, congrats to Sam and her partner Christy. Super exciting news in the soccer world. Yay. Helen, thank you so much for being here for the headlines. Look, next up, we are changing pace. We are talking about the accusations and charges that have been made against Alan Jones, what you need to know and what might happen next.
83-year-old broadcaster Alan Jones has been charged with 24 offences involving 8 victims over allegations he indecently assaulted young men across 2 decades.
Detectives from the Child Abuse Squad executed a search warrant at a unit in Circular Quay where they arrested an 83-year-old male. That male was later taken to the Sydney City Police Station where he has been charged with 24 offences. Those offences include 11 charges of aggravated indecent assault where the victim was under the authority of the offender, 9 charges related to assault with active indecency, 2 charges of common assault, and 2 charges of sexual touching. Police will allege these offences took place between 2001 and 2019, involving 8 victims. The youngest of those victims was 17-year-old at the time when we allege the offence took place.
A special strike force headed by New South Wales Police's Child Abuse Squad had been investigating Jones for the last 9 months.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank the investigators for all the hard work that they've done in regard to this challenging investigation. But more importantly, I would like to thank the victims for their courage that they've shown in coming forward and reporting to police.
The probe came off the back of a lengthy investigation by 9 newspapers that was first made public in December last year. At the time this story went public, Jones strongly denied all the allegations made against him.
I refute them entirely and the inferences associated with them. But the Get Jones campaign is nothing new in my life.
His lawyers calling the accusations, quote, scandalous, grossly offensive and seriously defamatory of him, end quote. Jones, a teacher and former Wallabies coach turned radio presenter, was the #1 broadcaster in the Harbour City for more than 30 years and wielded extraordinary power in the halls of government, arts, culture and sport. Today, we're joined by Kate McClymont, Chief Investigative Reporter at the Sydney Morning Herald and the journalist who broke the story almost a year ago. Kate, welcome to the briefing. What do we know about the accusations and charges made against Jones?
Well, look, the day started at 7:45 a.m. when detectives went to Alan Jones's upmarket apartment overlooking the Opera House down at Circular Quay, and they arrested him and executed search warrants. So they've seized various devices. I would imagine that's, phones, computers, etc. So police were there for some hours before Alan Jones was driven away in a car at around 11:30. And since that time, he's been under investigation. Now, we've heard that he has been charged with 24 offences regarding 8 different victims, and they are a range of offences, but the most serious of which being aggravated indecent assault. And the youngest of the victims was 17 years old. But it was interesting that the police said that Alan Jones knew some of the victims privately, some professionally, and some he had met them for the first time when he's alleged to have assaulted them.
Can you give us a quick explainer of who Alan Jones is and why his arrest is such a big deal?
Alan Jones, for more than 30 years, was the most powerful and influential media figure possibly in the country. He was on 2UE and then 2GB radio, where he was the #1 breakfast broadcaster for decades. But more importantly than that was that he wielded power in an extraordinary way. He could get you fired. He could ruin people's careers. He had, ministers quivering when he attacked them on air. So it's hard to get across just how powerful he was as an individual.
And how did he come into such a powerful position to be, dining with prime ministers, celebrities and other influential figures?
Look, that's an interesting question because he was also the coach of the Wallabies, the Australian rugby union team. He coached a first-grade rugby league team here in Sydney. But he has just got the most forceful personality, often hectoring and domineering, but the sheer power of his advocacy and his personality is what got him to the top of the media industry. He had no hesitation in ripping shreds off people he disagreed with on his program, and having that #1 rating program behind you was an immensely powerful asset.
Have we heard from Jones's camp yet?
We haven't heard from them. I haven't seen any media releases. His solicitor, Brian Wrench, arrived mid-morning, and no doubt that they'll be consulting with him when he leaves the police station.
Does he still hold the same amount of power today as he has previously?
I think his power has diminished considerably. Once you don't have a platform, it does take away your influence. So no, I don't think he wields the same amount of power as he once did.
And what can we expect to happen next?
He has been granted bail, and the bail conditions include that he not approach witnesses and he not approach any points of departure, meaning he can't leave the country. So he will appear in court on the 18th of December.
That was Kate McClymont, Chief Investigative Reporter at the Sydney Morning Herald. And that's all for this episode of The Briefing. We'd love it if you could share this ep with someone else you think might enjoy it as well. And if you want to keep up with our other content, you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, and on TikTok and YouTube, just search for Listener Newsroom. We'll be back in your feed this afternoon from 3. I'm Helen Smith. See you next time.
Listener.